Could you share with us some stories where you competed maybe against a competitor that's like much bigger than you, but we still won the deal?
Well, it's a great subject, and I guess when I look back at the sales that I've made in order to help grow the business, I get the feeling that all of them, or most of them, were impossible sales. And I say that because typically we were under-resourced. I was a one-man band in a country pitching for different groups. The product may not have been a perfect fit. The pricing was usually too high, and we were usually outgunned by very big competition. And I'm talking about global IT companies. So, in our kind of company, we had to provide a niche and we had to do something differently. And our point of entry was usually either a lost deal or a deal that a supplier had lost, or perhaps a recommendation that we talked to someone obscure, or it could have been an existing customer that was terminating our business and wanted to move on. And in many of those situations I found as opportunities to engage and, oddly enough, to succeed. So I say that a lot of the sales that have globalized our business have been impossible sales. But they have happened, and they have been the very thing that's driven our success. I mean, if I was to just pick a couple, we had a very long-standing client in the UK. 25 years later, they are still our client. And they had terminated our project because they said the technology back then, this was in the year 2000, was out of date. And we had a new cloud technology that was coming in the year 2001, and we offered them that at a very low price as a test client, and we turned them around from a lost sale to a client that's now been buying off us for an additional 25 years. And we often think about that story because it was one question that I asked them at the time of having really considered defeat, and that was having been told that they were not going to be buying systems of our type. And so I said, well, what are you doing then? What are you doing then to, in your IT department? And they explained that they were investing in a cloud platform. This is in 2001. And during the explanation, I realized that our new product that had not been launched yet would potentially run on that same infrastructure. And I said to them, why don't you test out our product on your new cloud infrastructure and see if we can, make it work for you. And after a discussion about the low cost that would have to be, we moved forward. So that was an example of a deal that had been lost, and the board had decided to not buy that technology. Another example of a lost deal was when I had a colleague in Australia that had a long list of sites and prospects that he hadn't been able to convert. And I decided to go and meet them one by one. And the very first one I met explained to me that they'd thrown our proposal into the bin, and that the proposal was, it was interesting, and it was the sort of thing that they were interested in doing at one point, but our cost was massively too high. And they had proceeded to purchase another 8 licenses from the existing vendor. So they wondered why I was in the room following them up. Through the conversation that I had about the subject matter, it was clear that they liked our technology and they liked the operational advantage. They just didn't like our cost. And again, we were able to turn that into a pilot. Okay. And the pilot succeeded, and ultimately it became a rollout, and that customer has used this system now in about 80 properties over the years, and they have been a customer for 20 years. And it started from...
So how did you turn this around, Greg? How did you turn around like their decision, like from no to yes? Like, what was the shift?
It's a diagnosis process, and I've tried to explain it to people. It's a little bit like a doctor diagnosing a patient, I guess, and figuring out where it hurts. they give you a couple of clues usually, in a meeting, and the pain points, I guess, might be one way to describe that. But in this particular meeting, I got the feeling that we had something that they had considered nirvana, technology nirvana, because there was a disagreement going on between the CEO and the CFO about the fact that they were going to centralize their business on technology. In other words, put it on the cloud instead of running it on premise. And we had a technology that could do that. And I knew the business advantages of that technology. And so did the CEO. And it was clear that he wanted the idea of the business benefit, but the only issue was the very high cost of the technology. So I said to him, and these were the words I used, if I could somehow find a way to address the huge cost issue, would they be interested in a pilot? And he went, sure, but you're about X times the price that we would normally pay for such a system. Ultimately, we did agree on a price, but it was that particular conversation turning around was about recognizing we were the right solution with the wrong price. And we also were able to explain how we would implement the system in a progressive way, de-risk the pilot process, and ultimately we succeeded in proving what we said. And we did one live site, then a second, and then ultimately got an order for, at the time, 38 properties, and then another 50 odd over the years. So, and they've been a customer for 24 years. It's about what happens in the room when you have a meeting of the minds, and it usually comes from a debate about the subject matter. Asking the right question is a really important thing, and diagnosing the problem is a really important thing as well. Finding out what the critical problem is that they're trying to solve, what the business pain suffering is, and how you apply your software or your technology to solve that pain in a conversation, in a way that people trust and can see what you're talking about.